Sometimes in life, you have to just leave things unsaid. Other times, it's worth being honest and speaking your opinion. In today's video, we, as in myself, I, will be dealing with something that kind of is a bit of both. Mikel Antonio's always going on podcasts and saying things. He is always bantering with Callum Wilson, or he's going on other podcasts to talk about his career and life at West Ham. This time, he's said something that's caused quite the stir. I'm going to talk about it in this video, give my thoughts, and explain why there is both not cause and just cause for concern. Mikel Antonio has made numerous guest appearances on a variety of podcasts and YouTube channels. As I said in the introduction, he mainly does one with Callum Wilson and they banter each other and show some kind of friendship. He recently went on the Filthy Fellas podcast to discuss the 2022-23 season, talked about David Moyes, the European campaign, and he also gave insight into why one particular player has been struggling to make an impact at West Ham. The player in question is Italian striker Gianluca Scamacca. Antonio has been fighting at times for that starting striker place with Scamacca, who joined West Ham from Sassuolo last summer for over £30 million. Although the competition was very much welcomed, it hasn't really worked out for the Italian. He's been injured a lot with problems with his knee. He's made 3 goals in 16 appearances, and he's probably going to end up going back to Italy if things don't work out. He's already linked with a move to a few clubs in Serie A as it is, and he's being branded a flop. Let me address the flop thing. I don't think that he is a flop. I think if he stays fully fit, we can have a real good striker there. Antonio had cried out for competition in the starting spot because he'd had it too easy for a long time. He was always starting because no one was there to challenge his position. Now that Scamacca's in, and even Danny Ings as well, Antonio has competition for his starting place. However, Antonio did admit that Scamacca or Moyes are to blame for the reason why the 24-year-old is not making the most of his time in East London. I'm going to read a quote that Antonio said and then give my thoughts on it. And the main reason why is because I think this might be getting misconstrued by a lot of people. He is actually quality. He is a quality player. The problem is he cannot play the way the manager wants to play. He needs a different type of manager who will let him play with players to come off him and stuff like that. You see that the ball comes to him and it sticks. But with David Moyes, you have to feed off scraps, be a fighter. And he's not that. If anything, it's not a criticism of Scamacca in general. Antonio does say here he is actually quality. I think that, if anything, Antonio is having a pop at David Moyes' system. He's saying that the manager does not play some players to their strengths, and this is why they do not get the most out of their own potential. Famously, David Moyes likes to convert wingers into strikers and then turn them into permanent strikers. He did this with Marko Arnautovic. He's done it with Mikel Antonio. He's done it with Jarrod Bowen a couple of times, even though it hasn't been as productive as maybe the previous 2 mentioned names. But the one thing that gets me about this quote is that Antonio is saying that if Scamacca gets a new manager, possibly at West Ham, he will be able to be more of himself. Scamacca's a very possession-based striker, and he fitted around the possession-based style that David Moyes wanted. That's the reason why we appointed Mark Warburton, because he was used to being a possession-based manager. He came in as assistant. It hasn't worked out really in that way. As I said in the previous video, Scamacca likes to be in the close proximity to his midfielders, and that's how he links up. Antonio runs at players and is physical. Scamacca is tall, but not as physically strong as Antonio, and prefers to be more of a goal poacher. We saw very early on the season that Scamacca was scoring a lot from inside the box. He did it very much in the European campaigns. I think that it's a fair point, to be honest. He does need a different type of manager. And we have seen the ball come to Scamacca, and it has gone in the net when he's very close. In the David Moyes team, you really do have to be very prepared to run. When he was first appointed manager in November 2017, he said, if you don't run, you don't play. That's his mantra. That's his MO as such. You have to be willing to put in 110% and even more to earn your starting place in his team. I think that being a very static player who works around a player isn't really best suited to this manager. So that's the point that I think Antonio is trying to make. He's saying that Scamacca is an excellent player, but this manager won't do any favours in the long run. I have to somewhat criticise Mikel Antonio himself. It's not a very professional thing to do, to go on a podcast and talk about matters within the club like this. I'm not too interested it is your opinion, if it's like that, because if it's your opinion, you have a right to voice it, but probably not somewhere where everyone's going to view it and it's open for interpretation like that. It's got a lot of people confused, but if anything, in my opinion, Antonio is kind of right. And I don't think it's disrespect towards Scamacca. If anything, it's a stab at the manager. The manager needs to start playing players to their strengths, otherwise they will be trash. We've seen this under Moyes. Players have left the club, gone elsewhere, and been very impressive for other clubs because they're under a different manager who knows how to get the best out of them and is able to adapt. Like Charles Darwin said, adapt to your surroundings, adapt to your players in the same sense. That's why it's not working out for Scamacca right now. If he has someone like Paquetá who can be very close to him and play in short balls, he'll be fine. But getting Scamacca to run at players is not working out. That's what Antonio does. And it's a fair comment to make. As I say, it is an opinion. It's not the most professional thing to do, to go and voice that up on a platform that can be streamed worldwide. But then again, it's just honesty. And Antonio's got the right to say it, but he's not wrong at the same time. So it's difficult for me to come to a judgment. Because, if anything, as I say, I'll do this and just say this. It's a criticism of the manager, not the player. Because we know that Scamacca is quality, but under a new manager, he will thrive. Unfortunately, it might not be at West Ham United Football Club. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Take care, everybody, and I will see you all soon.